Good morning and welcome to the bottom line. In this very short macroeconomics uh, episode, I'm going to throw some light on how I relate inflation and forecast the interest rates of our economy. I do it for India when in the right, with the right knowledge, I can do it for any other economy as well. But this is broadly the principles that I apply as to how we can forecast interest rate cycles and how we can benefit from them. Again, I'm very carefully using the word forecast here and not prediction because there's no way that we can predict every single step that a central bank will take, but we can largely forecast where the interest rates are likely to move, right? So, in the key pointers that we will discuss, one is how inflation and interest rates are related very broadly, which inflation to use as a benchmark when you're understanding and looking at data. What are the RBI comfort levels of inflation? The previous RBI policy, monetary policy commentary, which is very important as to how the Reserve Bank and the MPC committee overall is thinking about inflation and how they are acting. Is there a unanimous vote or not? All of those things we'll look at. Analyzing the current scenario of inflation, broadly setting expectations of the interest rates as conclusions, right? So, if we understand the relation between the inflation to the interest rates, it is very simple. As the inflation grows, we need to start increasing our interest rates to discourage people from spending, from taking loans, and we want them to be more conservative so that the inflation can then be brought down. This is the very simple correlation between the two. The same goes when inflation is very low. We want people to start spending, start taking loans, start taking interest in new businesses, and that's why the interest rates are reduced in order to encourage them and bring the inflation back to comfortable levels. With this simple relation, you can call it inverse relation to a certain extent, but it is also governed by many other factors which are not just related to interest rates. The benchmark, right? There was once upon a time in 2013, I remember when I started studying finance as a full-time subject. I remember that there was debates around, do we look at CPI, do we look at WPI, do we look at the baskets of WPI, how do we structure the benchmark? And then there was a committee which was talking about, if we have to use CPI as headline, how do we change the basket of products that are there in the inflation index, all of that. And then eventually, after the study, it was finalized that CPI will be taken as the headline inflation for the Indian economy. It was earlier WPI, but then as WPI was not very correlated and not it was not showcasing the Indian economy very closely, we shifted to CPI inflation, right? So till date, from 2013, CPI has been used as the headline inflation, which is always considered by RBI as the number against which they do their analysis and understanding of where the economy is right now moving to. From the RBI comfort levels, which is also called as a fixed inflation regime, where we are trying to define what is the level of inflation that is important for an economy to grow, but it should be healthy. It should not be way too high, it should not be way too low. It has to be in a certain range and hovering around a certain median number. And that number, after a study, was decided as 4% plus or minus 2%, which means that the range in which our inflation should ideally be in most of the time, except times like COVID, except times which are unprecedented, we should be hovering in the range of 2 to 6% of inflation. And that is what will bring a sustained growth in the Indian economy. So that's the level that has been defined, right? And if we look at the previous policy commentary, then the previous policy commentary is one of the most important aspects, which talks about how has the RBI thought in the previous policy commentary, what have the votes have been, who has kind of not gone with the unanimous vote, has anybody gone against the unanimous vote, and that puts a lot of perspective about that person's thought process, and it is very interesting to read these things. But maybe that I'll cover in the next monetary policy, where possibly I'll take you through the commentary of monetary policy and the minutes that have been shared. But broadly, if you see the highlighted area, everyone unanimously voted to keep the policy rate unchanged at 6.5%, and everyone unanimously voted for focus on withdrawal of accommodation. Now, what that means is that generally you will see the statements of that the focus will be on accommodating the growth. But this time, and a lot of other policies, four policies before this also, if you'll read the statement, it talks about withdrawal of accommodation. That means growth is not the priority. The priority is to fix inflation first and then take care of growth at a later stage, right? And that's what you will see in most MPC meetings going forward from here, and that is important, right? So from the votes that you see, there are 6 members. Everyone voted for the same action to be taken, right? If we look at the current inflation, the CPI is showing a decline. We've seen decline, but this we saw another whipsaw right now, where CPI rose to 4.81% from 4.25, where it was on a declining path, but then suddenly it has spiked up. It is also likely that we'll see CPI growing slightly higher because of the tomato prices in India, the inflation because of the floods and the crops being completely damaged. That could lead to some bit of higher inflation. So that's where I'm seeing that we may not come to the 4% comfortable level and sustain there very quickly. Right? I'm seeing at least these 6 months and 6 months of the next year for this to happen. So that's where I'm seeing that a shift in stance could take some time, but it is very likely that we'll come to that 4% level with the current policy actions that we have taken, and we will be taking some more in the near future. If I look at the broad expectations, and again, this is a very personal opinion, but this is backed by data, this is backed by study, this is backed by the understanding of what's happening in the overall broader economy. But if we look at it with all the positive news around, uh, I'm kind of able to assess that the inflation is not going to decrease so fast. We might feel that we will go to the 4% level and everything will be goody goody in a few months, but that is not going to be the case, is what I am understanding from the current inflation levels. The supply side management that we are doing poorly, this could lead to a lot of inflation in food uh, and pulses. And tomatoes are already giving a lot of pain to the inflation index. But that's what is broadly is my view. And from here, what I know is we are very close to the peak interest rates. 6.5 is, we're very close to the peak interest rates, but it is not giving me any kind of confidence that 6.5 will be the terminal interest rate. That means we'll not go beyond this. I see a very small probability, but there is a probability that we might hike by another 25 basis point or even 50 basis point to control this particular period of monsoon that has done some unexpected damage to the economy, right? So that's my broader view and broader expectations from the economy. So if you see, track the inflation, understand what is happening on the various products of inflation. See, broadly, inflation is fuel, food. Uh, that's majorly what takes care of inflation. Housing to a certain extent and utilities to a certain extent. But if you track fuel and food, you should be able to cover most of the CPI index and understand where the CPI is heading and what could be the likely actions from Reserve Bank. So if you see, in my view going forward, I do see Reserve Bank would take the chance of increasing the interest rates further slightly, 20 bps to 50 bps in the next 6 months or even in a year. It could be a staggered move, but it will likely come so that they are able to control inflation much earlier than they anticipate. We are seeing that trend coming, but let's see how they will do it. I don't want to predict every single monetary policy and every single move that they will take, but broadly, this is what I see, and that is how I will also navigate my investment strategies, or how I think about the economy, or how I do certain things in managing my money. Right. I hope this was insightful, and I'll see you in the next one. Thank you so much for your time, for watching this. Bye bye.